If there's one thing that people love in sport, it's the rise of the underdog, the unexpected, the impossible becoming possible. And what better way to complete this turnaround from zero to hero than pulling off the most unlikely of comebacks as snatching victory from the jaws of defeat? Well, thankfully we see it rather a lot in football and especially in the Champions League. So that's what I've got for you guys today. A list of some brilliant last minute winners, some second leg comebacks and the final of all finals in this top 10 countdown of the best Champions League comebacks of all time. First off, let's start with a turnaround that owes its plaudits to one man in particular. After suffering a 2-0 defeat at the hands of the German side WOLFSBURG, Real Madrid headed back to the Bernabéu in the second leg of their 2016 quarter-final, knowing that they had to turn things around and they had to rely on someone to push them there. Cue Cristiano Ronaldo. In the second leg, the Portuguese striker grabbed another hat-trick, one of many for Real Madrid, which saw them turn the tie completely on its head and gave them extra momentum heading into the semi-finals in what turned out to be yet another victorious campaign for Los Blancos in the Champions League. Next up, we feature yet another comeback that single-handedly owes all of the plaudits and the recognition to a hat-trick hero. Back in 2013-14, it was probably one of the greatest nights for David Moyes in his ill-fated spell as Manchester United manager, and he owes it all to Robin van Persie. Much like Real Madrid back in the number 10 spot, Manchester United had lost the first leg abroad by 2-0, this time to Greek champions Olympiacos. However, back at the Theatre of Dreams under the Manchester United sky, well, Van Persie really turned it on. He managed to bag a hat-trick and seal United's progression to the next round, where their luck eventually ran out against Bayern Munich. Now, I know what you're thinking, this was just Olympiacos, it's not that much of a great turnaround. Well, at the time, it was a rather troubled season for Manchester United, with David Moyes getting sacked a few months later. And as for Olympiacos, well, they were on a 26-game unbeaten run in the Greek league. That involved 24 wins and 2 draws, so they weren't exactly in bad form themselves. Moving on to number 8 and a small trip down memory lane for all Madrid and Monaco fans. However, Madrid fans, you may want to look away now. Back in the spring of 2004, Real Madrid put Monaco to the sword 4-2 in the Bernabéu to all but book a place in their third consecutive semi-finals in the Champions League. However, this list isn't about comebacks for no reason. This Monaco side were resilient as ever and had some big name players at the time, including Ludovic Giuly, Fernando Morientes and a young Patrice Evra. However, with a Real Madrid side including Raúl, Iker Casillas and Zidane, they ended up taking the lead before a mammoth comeback from Monaco saw them score 3 goals and eventually go through on away goals, with the tie finishing 5-all on aggregate. Absolute scenes in the south of France. Oh, and if you're wondering how far Monaco actually got in that competition, well, they ended up going all the way to the final, where they eventually lost to Porto 3-0, a Porto side managed by none other than Jose Mourinho. Next up, and a team that, to be honest, looked in an absolute mess heading into the return leg of the round of 16 fixture back in 2012. Just over halfway through the season, Chelsea's chance of finishing in the top 4 looked slim. They'd already sacked new manager Andre Villas-Boas within the first 6 months, and I guess some things just never change at Chelsea. So you can imagine the task that Roberto Di Matteo faced as caretaker Chelsea manager when he had to play the second leg already 3-1 down from the first game in Naples. However, Chelsea managed to get through, but only just. Goals from John Terry and Didier Drogba gave Chelsea hope on the night before Gok and Inler struck for Napoli to take them through on aggregate. However, just towards the end of the game, cometh the hour, cometh the man, and Chelsea's all-time leading goalscorer Frank Lampard popped up with a penalty to send the game into extra time. It was here that Branislav Ivanovic managed to find the back of the net and send Chelsea through. They then went on to win the most unlikely of Champions League titles, considering the troubles that the season brought them both on and off the pitch. Now, our next comeback is less of a dramatic fairy tale and more of a goal-scoring show. Facing a quarter-final exit in 2015 at the hands of Porto, then managed by future Spain and Real Madrid embarrassment Julian Lopetegui, Bayern Munich knew that they had to do something in the second leg in the Allianz Arena, and they did it. Big time. Within the first half, they had wiped out the 3-1 scoreline that they fell victim to in Porto, and had managed to score 5 goals in the first half. After grabbing a goal apiece in the second half, the referee finally brought the game to an end at the scoreline of 6-1, meaning that Bayern Munich went through 7-4 on aggregate. Now, if you look at that Bayern Munich side from back in 2015, they still have 6 players that are currently at the club now. However, I'm not so sure if that's a good thing or not, considering some of their troubles this season. Okay, heading into the top 5, and we go yet again back to 2004, where the reigning champions AC Milan were sitting pretty in the second leg of their Champions League game against Deportivo La Coruña. In the first leg in Italy, they'd already smashed the Spaniards 4-1, and things were looking good. Now, for those of you who weren't aware, this AC Milan team was the absolute nuts. Sure, 1 year later, they went on to lose to Liverpool in the Champions League final, more on that a little bit later, but just have a listen to some of the names on this list. There was Dida, Cafu, Nesta, Maldini, Kaká, Seedorf, Pirlo, Shevchenko. They were unbelievable. If you were to bet on anything but AC Milan going through, well, you'd probably be a very, very rich man, even to this day. That's because with 3 first-half goals and a 4th in the second half to put the icing on the cake, Deportivo went through 5-4 in aggregate and ensured that nobody in the surrounding area would get a wink of sleep that night. Come to think of it, there's probably some sort of statistic in a spike in babies being born 9 months later from that evening, but either way, it's absolute madness. Into number 4 now, and before we get into the top 3, this one is an incredible comeback, not just because of the goals that were scored in quick succession, but because of the fact it was a final. It's the first of 2 finals that are going to end up being on this list, but first off, let's talk about Manchester United's Champions League triumph back in 1999. As Sir Alex Ferguson led his Manchester United team out onto the Nou Camp pitch, there was an air of positivity surrounding them, and to be honest, their opponents as well. This really was a clash of the titans. Both teams, Manchester United and Bayern Munich, had already sealed their domestic title victories, and Man United had already won the FA Cup as well, so there was extra positivity surrounding them. That was until in the 6th minute when Bayern Munich's Mario Basler smashed in a free kick to give the Germans the lead. This was the way it stayed until 85 minutes later, when in injury time at the end of the 90, the most epic of comebacks was about to take place. First off, the first substitute, Teddy Sheringham, swept in an equaliser before, unbelievably, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer flicked out his right foot and managed to poke in the winner in the 93rd minute of injury time. This was the most incredible comeback that the Champions League had ever seen, especially in a final. Up until then it was, at least, anyway. Okay, into 3rd position now, and we have another game which is sealed in history, mostly because of the fantastic piece of commentary that went along with it. For those of you watching in English, that is. Right now, if you were to look on the internet, it would be difficult to find highlights of Roma against Barcelona without hearing Peter Drury's unbelievable commentary about Roma rising from their ruins with a Greek god in Rome. The Greek god he's talking about is Kastos Manolas, and the reason for it? Well, he just nodded in the goal which had seen Roma pull off the most unlikely of comebacks against Barcelona in last season's quarter-finals. Now, having looked at the 4-1 scoreline from the first leg, you would have thought, along with many fans, that the second leg was a foregone conclusion. The fact that Edin Dzeko managed to bag a consolation didn't really seem like much, and to be honest, most of the Roma fans probably turned up for a chance to see Lionel Messi live in action. However, the Roma players had other ideas. Edin Dzeko and Daniele De Rossi scored 2 goals to give Roma a chance, just a slim chance, before, as mentioned before, Kastos Manolas met a corner at the front post to flick in the goal which would see Roma through 4-all on away goals. Unfortunately for them, the absolute hiding they got in the semi-final first leg at Anfield against Liverpool was just too much to come back from again in the second final of the semi-leg, and so their journey ended 1 match before Europe's showpiece event. Okay, it's runner-up time now, and I'm assuming that most of you are probably going to disagree with this decision, so of course let me know in the comments section below. However, I like to think of the second place in this list and the first place as pretty much equal, because both of them had unbelievable significances to both of their clubs. For Liverpool though, one of the greatest nights in their illustrious history was in Istanbul back in May 2005. Now, much like with the AC Milan team I mentioned before, they were in fantastic shape heading into the final. It was 1 year later from that Deportivo loss. They still had all their quality players, and they'd even managed to add Hernan Crespo in up front on loan from Chelsea. Now, no offence to the Liverpool starting lineup and to a few of these players, but starting a Champions League final with Jimmy Traore, Steve Finnan and Milan Baros was hardly going to strike fear into AC Milan. It definitely didn't, and by half-time, Carlo Ancelotti's men were 3-0 up. However, cue the comeback. First off was Steven Gerrard, a pinpoint header with his arms waving to really G up the crowd and the rest of his teammates. Just a few minutes later, Vladimir Šmica hit a low drive which nestled in the bottom corner to really get the heart racing. Finally, it was Xabi Alonso's turn. He tucked in the rebound to a penalty that he'd just seen saved, and things were level again. With all the momentum behind them and the 3-all draw staying that way until the end of extra time, Lady Luck really shone on Liverpool that evening. As Jerzy Dudek palmed away Andrei Shevchenko's rather tame penalty, Liverpool had won their 5th Champions League title and ensured that not only the thousands of Liverpool fans in the stadium, but the millions on Merseyside were to go absolutely mental. It is definitely the greatest Champions League final of all time. And finally, as we come to number 1, we reveal the greatest Champions League comeback of all time. This isn't a list of the greatest Champions League finals, because as I just mentioned, Liverpool would have won it. But for this comeback, there was a ridiculous amount of goals, and they absolutely smashed one of the craziest records that I don't ever think will be beaten again. Before the second leg of the round of 16 tie between Barcelona and PSG back in 2017, Barcelona were attempting to become the first ever team in Champions League history to overturn a 4-0 deficit from the first leg. Oh, and if it wasn't hard enough, they didn't even have an away goal to fall back on to hopefully see them through on away goals. The 90+ minutes that were to follow were truly the most outstanding probably that has ever been seen on a football pitch. Basically, the game was split into 2 tasks. First of all, Barcelona had to get back into the game, and they did this. By the 50th minute, they'd scored 3 goals without reply, and therefore gave themselves 40 minutes to just score 1 more to even up the tie. However, Edinson Cavani then went and threw an absolute spanner in the works by smashing in a goal for PSG and making it 3-1 on the night. This then gave Barcelona their second task of the evening: score 3 more goals to win the tie outright. Come the 88th minute, and this was still the case. The score was still 3-1, and the mission looked insurmountable. That was until Neymar decided to get his act together. First off, there was a beautiful free kick. Second, he managed to bag a penalty. This left the score at 5-all in aggregate, and with PSG heading through on away goals. But then, Barcelona found a winner through the most unlikely of sources. The midfielder turned flying right back, Sergi Roberto. As Roberto raced through and managed to get a touch on the ball over the top, he simultaneously gave us one of the greatest and most entertaining footballing moments ever, as well as one of the biggest tragedies. For all the Parisians that were in the stadium and around the world, it was probably a nightmare too difficult to comprehend. But for all the Barcelona fans everywhere, it was the wildest of dreams come true. From 4-0 down with 7 minutes to go to winning the tie 6-1 on the night and going through 6-5 on aggregate, Barcelona really gave us the greatest Champions League comeback of all time. So there you have it, guys, my list of top 10 great Champions League comebacks of all time. But what do you guys think? I'll be super interested to hear all of your thoughts in the comments section below. If you're a Liverpool fan, I'm assuming you're going to go with this Istanbul. If you're a Deportivo fan, how can you forget that game against AC Milan? And for you Barcelona fans, I'm assuming it'll be the PSG one. Also, make sure you smash the like button whilst you're down there, and also click here to check out all of the other videos that we've got going on OneFootball, such as this video of epic proportions. But until next time, guys, until the next great comeback happens, I'll see you guys later.